It was 1:30 a.m., and the Interstate 15 in Nevada was a ribbon of black asphalt unspooling into the infinite desert darkness. Daniel, a 30-year-old traveling salesman, was driving back home to Los Angeles after a mandatory convention in Salt Lake City. He was exhausted and relying on caffeine and sheer willpower. The desert felt immense, swallowing his headlights whole. The only signs of life were the distant, flickering red lights of wind turbines and the occasional semi-truck, which passed him like colossal, roaring beasts. Daniel was glad for the quiet, but the quiet was absolute, a kind of silence that feels less like peace and more like a void waiting to be filled. Daniel pulled over onto the shoulder, his tires crunching on the gravel. He turned the radio dial, trying to find anything, news, music, static, anything that proved he was still connected to the real world. Nothing. The radio only emitted a low, consistent whine, a sound that felt less like an electronic failure and more like a high-pitched, mocking laugh. He tried his phone again. The screen simply read, "No service, no emergency." The last part, "no emergency," was the most terrifying. It was telling him help wasn't just unavailable, it was forbidden. He decided to backtrack. He pulled a sharp U-turn, which was illegal but necessary. As soon as he started driving back the way he came, he saw it in his rearview mirror, a blindingly bright white SUV, driving without its lights on, coming up extremely fast. Daniel accelerated, assuming it was a careless driver. But the SUV didn't brake. It stayed exactly 50 feet behind him, matching his every speed, even when he hit 95 miles per hour. It was a predator, maintaining a constant distance. He realized the SUV wasn't just matching his speed, it was taunting him. The back window of the white SUV was completely covered by a large, hand-painted symbol in a dripping, dark red paint. It looked like a crudely drawn eye inside a jagged, broken circle. As he focused on it, the red symbol seemed to flicker, almost pulsing with the SUV's speed. It was a sign, a mark of ownership. Daniel swerved violently, forcing the SUV to briefly pull alongside him. For a split second, their windows were parallel. He risked a glance at the driver's seat. It was empty. The SUV was driving itself. But as he looked at the passenger seat, he saw a face. It was pale, impossibly elongated, with a jaw that seemed to be permanently slack. Its eyes were large, wet, black circles, and it wasn't looking at the road. It was looking directly at Daniel, with a wide, slow smile. Daniel slammed the brakes, letting the white SUV blast ahead. He watched it disappear around a bend. He slowed to 30 miles per hour, trying to collect himself. He drove for 10 minutes, his hands shaken. He came upon a massive, ornate concrete bridge, a beautiful, old piece of architecture that looked completely out of place in the desolate desert. The strange thing was, his map showed no bridge here. As he drove onto it, the radio filled with a sudden, deafening shriek of static. He crossed the bridge. He drove another 5 miles, constantly checking his rearview mirror. He looked ahead, and there it was again, the Exit 13 Barstow 5-mile sign. He had driven backwards earlier, and now he was driving forwards, but the distance to the same exit sign never changed. He was trapped in a spatial loop created by the entity in the white SUV. He was driving on a road that only existed for him. The gas gauge finally hit empty. Daniel had been ignoring it, hoping the loop would end. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died completely. Silence. He was stranded in the middle of a loop on a non-existent highway, surrounded by darkness and the knowledge that the face from the passenger seat was somewhere nearby. He tried the door locks one last time. Locked. He sat rigid, his eyes scanning the windows. The white SUV would return. He knew it. He closed his eyes, praying for the sun to rise. Then he heard it. A gentle, polite, but utterly terrifying tap on the glass of the rear windshield. Tap, tap. The creature wasn't attacking. It was waiting for him to acknowledge it. Daniel whipped around. There was nothing there. He instinctively turned the key, hoping for a miracle. The car sputtered, but didn't start. As he looked at the battery light, he saw it wasn't just dead. The battery light was flickering the shape of the red, jagged eye symbol from the SUV's rear window. The entity had been inside the car's electronics all along, controlling his escape and the loop. The entity changed its tactic. The gravel around the car started to whisper. It wasn't air moving the sound. The individual stones themselves seemed to be vibrating with dry, rattling voices. The voices were incomprehensible, but their tone was one of immense, ancient hunger. It was trying to drive him out of the car. Daniel knew the car was no longer a sanctuary. He forced himself to look outside. The whispering stopped. 50 yards ahead, where the highway should have been featureless, stood a single rusted, full-length mirror leaning against a large, unmoving cactus. It wasn't reflecting the highway. It was reflecting the interior of a dusty, empty hospital room. And in the reflection, the pale, smiling face of the passenger was now staring out from the hospital room. The sight of the hospital room and the smiling face broke Daniel's last thread of sanity. He knew he was being pulled into their reality. He smashed the passenger side window with his elbow and stumbled out onto the gravel. He ran, not toward the mirror, but into the deepest, darkest desert on the side of the road, leaving the car, the road, and the loop behind. He ran until the whispers of the gravel were too far away to be heard. Daniel was found 2 days later, miles from his car, severely dehydrated, babbling about the exit signs. He never spoke about the SUV or the face. Today, he refuses to drive. He only takes trains. But sometimes, when he looks out the train window at the passing landscape, he catches a glimpse of the red, jagged eye symbol, drawn faintly in the dust on the outside of the window pane, confirming that the entity didn't need the highway to follow him. He is still on its road.